Hello, BookTube, and welcome to Book to Film. This week, as part of New World's November, I am doing John W. Campbell's Who Goes There and The Thing, the 1951 version, directed by Christian Nyby and produced by Howard Hawks. Sort of. We'll get to that in a few moments. The story was published in 1938 in Astounding Science Fiction, and that was under John W. Campbell's pseudonym, Don A. Stewart. Now, it starts out, it's set, first of all, I'll say it's set in Antarctica, a research station, a group of scientists that are investigating the magnetic South Pole. And they have found an anomaly. There is, near the magnetic South Pole, there is another source of magnetism. And they are out, they send a little expedition from their base camp to investigate this. And we learn this through a flashback in the original story. It starts out quite interesting. I'll read the first paragraph and a little bit. The place stank. A queer, mingled stench that only the ice-buried cabins of an Arctic camp know, compounded of reeking human sweat and the heavy fish oil stench of melted seal blubber. An overtone of liniment combated the musty smell of sweat and snow-drenched furs, the acrid odor of burnt cooking fat, and the animal not unpleasant smell of dogs diluted by time hung in the air. Lingering odors of machine oil contrasted sharply with the taint harness dressing and leather, yet somehow, through that reek of human beings and their associates, dogs, machines, and cooking, came another taint. It was a queer, neck-ruffling thing, a faintest suggestion of an odor alien among the smells of industry and life, and it was a life smell. So we learn subsequently in the next few pages that they found the anomaly, and it's much smaller than they expected. And they start digging down to it because they can measure it. It's like 280 feet long and about 25 feet, I think, or 45. If I could find that place. But they say it's shaped as a submarine without the conning tower. So it's somewhat cigar-shaped. And they could see this, and it's made out of metal. So they start digging down to it. And they come upon a creature that has 3 red eyes and snake-like hair. It's frozen solid. One of the diggers puts a ice pick into its skull. So they continue digging, and they dig down to what they realize is a spaceship. It's been there for 20 million years. And the door is slightly propped open. They can see through the ice. They can't open it any further, but they can see through the ice equipment and things like that. But they surmise that it crash landed because of the magnetic South Pole, and it screwed up the instruments for this. This is a hypothesis they have. And it crashed, and one of the creatures, one of the aliens, left the craft but got 10, 15 feet and froze to death and has been there for 21 million years. So they want to get inside this craft. So they use some thermite bombs They don't know what the craft is made of at this point. They try everything, banging on it, using their bronze uh, picks and so forth, no effect. And then they try some steel, no effect. Some acid, no effect. So they try some thermite bombs to clear out the ice so they can get inside. But it turns out that the vehicle, the spaceship, is made of magnesium, so it goes up in flames and sort of fries everything around and melts everything for miles. All any kind of electrical equipment that they have, radio and so forth. But they've cut out this creature that is not very big, but it's pretty scary, and they start getting. A few of them start getting some nightmares that we learn that this creature is alive still, and that it is telepathic, and that it will come to life. But this is all told in a flashback, because they are back at the main camp with the body, with the block of ice with the alien body inside of it, and a couple of the scientists are sort of arguing. One wants to defrost it and study it, and the others, well, they're unsure. They think that it could be dangerous to do this because it's an alien life form. And so the leader, the commander, Gary, he puts it to everybody to sort of, decide. Commander Gary, and to let everybody know, because there is a difference of opinion here. So they decide that they will defrost it. And one character, Connaught, or Connaught, that's the name, Connaught, is sort of draws the short straw, but he stays up to do some cosmic radiation charts and so forth. So he gets to babysit it overnight, and he says he fell asleep, and then he wakes up the main Dr. Blair that wants to study this, and saying that it's alive and it's escaped. It's gone walkies, in other words. So they do eventually find it with the huskies, the dogs, and it's they seem to kill it. Well, they do kill it, but they find, because they basically realize that it can. It's like a shapeshifter. It can morph into any being. It uses. It's like a virus that will take over the new organism, in this case dog, and will make a duplicate, imitate it perfectly, right down to the cell structures, that once it's done, it would be indistinguishable from a dog. And they realize that it can do this with any kind of living organism, a bird, humans. And at the same time, it retains its original form. So it makes a duplicate of itself, and it can just continually sort of, virus-like transmit this to the other animals. So they realize that they think this is very dangerous, and they want to stop it, basically. So, but they figure that, well, there's potential. This Connaught was, might be, in fact, he might be a thing, but they can't tell fully. But the one doctor decides is they can do a blood serum test, where they take one of the dogs and infuse it with human blood, so it can so when they do put human blood into it, it doesn't basically react badly, and they can tell from that. So they do this, but they need a lot of blood because of the size of the animal. So the Captain Gary and Blair, the doctor, um, donates the blood for this. So they test and they find out that Connaught is not a an alien, or so they think. But then they realize that the experiment's been tainted because one of them, Gary or Blair, is an alien. So it's become, because he tests they test the blood from the well what's the remains that they killed with the dogs, and they realize that that doesn't react either. So one of them is an alien, but they don't know which one. So the doctor sort of goes a bit doolally, goes a bit nuts. So and won't acknowledge, because he's the one that had the real deep dreams of how the alien is telepathic and is alive. So they lock him out into a far off, not too far, but a separate building, their sort of tools and so forth area, and they lock him in with heat and with food, canned food, so he can survive. And he doesn't want to touch anybody because, and he sort of, they figure that if he gets out, he'll just wipe everybody out in case this creature has taken over everybody, because they don't want it to get to civilization, because in a certain time it can just duplicate the whole population of the earth and take over. So but they're still stuck with the possibility of someone there. So, and then they find out that they figure, okay, well, maybe we can get another dog and redo the experiment. But it turns out all the dogs and the cows that they have there have been turned or turning to the thing, the alien. So the second in command, because after Gary, Commander Gary is thought to be an alien, he gives up his command to McCready, the second in command. So McCready wipes out the animals, and they make sure that nobody can sort of fly a plane out, or fly the plane, or anything out. So they make themselves very isolated until they can solve this, and they don't want rescue people to come in. So it goes on, and the cook goes crazy because he thinks he's milked the cows and this, so he runs out, but then they catch him and they throw him into another room, and he starts screaming religious prayers and everything, so it's bothering everybody. Everybody's on edge, so everybody's looking at each other because they don't know if they are alien or not. The person sitting next to you, and if they don't want to be alone with one other person, so there's always 3 or 4 that they go with. But then McCready he figures out a different way of doing this, because what happens is he's got an idea. But the cook Kinner is screaming, but they decide, okay, let's have a movie night. Yeah, everybody could be aliens, but let's have a movie night. But anyway, they have this movie night. They have these reels to watch cartoons and that, and I think it's just to keep people busy and everything. But then they realize that there's no sound coming from this Kinner, the cook. So they go and they find that he's got a knife through his neck. So they think that one of them is killed, thinking that he is an alien, or possibly, or just to shut him up, killed him. So they go back, and he gets an idea of how to do something, but then they find out that he was an alien. And they kill him, but they sort of burn him, and with electrical probe that just repeatedly and just destroys him. So So McCready has figured out, well, okay, then even when, this person is cut in half, it's still alive. So each part can become a whole as an animal. So they figures that through the blood, they can't tell by looking at the blood, but the blood will protect itself. So he takes blood from everybody, and tests it, and the one that is an alien, the blood will try to escape. So they know that that's the alien, so they kill that host, that person. So they find out there's 14 of them in the end, and they kill all the 14 and burn them. And then they're going, the doctor that's been out into the into the hut, the outside hut, they go to test him to see, but they find that he was an alien. He was like one of the first. So was this Connaught that he was taken over. He said he fell asleep, but he didn't take over. So he's killed and burned. But then they find in the hut the alien creature, like a ball, like it bounces across the room. It's got tentacles and things like that. And it's but they do kill it and they destroy it, but it was trying to make a way to escape. And it heated the room. It's created atomic power, like from the material that's around, and also an anti-gravity device that can be strapped on and used. So it ends with them having this stuff now. They have atomic power that's like cold fusion, in a sense that it's a small atomic plant, a nuclear power plant, and anti-gravity. So that's where the story ends, and humanity now has this, and they've defeated the alien. I want to talk more about the story, but then we'll go into the film now. 1951, RKO. I wanted to. Well, it was put out through RKO, but it was Howard Hawks, his Winchester Pictures. He bought the rights to the story, and a script was made, and Christian Nyby was hired to direct it. However, the story is, like a lot of them say, that Christian Nyby didn't direct. It was all Howard Hawks that directed, other than maybe a small scene. However, Howard Hawks has always denied this. The story is that he put the name up for Christian Nyby so he could get into the Directors Guild and begin, because it was his first picture direction, and then he went on to direct a lot of westerns later on TV. It started like the creature is James Arness, who then he's Marshall. He's Marshall. Oh, from Gunsmoke. I can't remember the Marshal's name now. But anyway, that like he's very tall, but he's the alien, and they find him frozen. And it starts out sort of similar, but the thing is, instead of Antarctica, it is the North Pole. It's the Arctic. It's an Arctic station, and they observe on radar a ship of some sort, of something that has crash landed about 45 miles north or nearby their station. So the Army, the Air Force, sends up a Captain Henry. So there's no Commander Gary, there's no McCready, there's no Blair. Like, the names are all changed. There's a reporter there. There's women on the base, and there's a love interest as well between the Captain Henry and the secretary or personal assistant of one of the scientists. But they go up to this, and then they're going to take the scientists, fly them to this location. So they find this saucer. It actually becomes a flying saucer instead, and again they want to free it and get the ice. So they use the thermite bombs, but it starts on fire again and it blows up. But they do find this creature, and they say it's 8 feet tall. So they cut out the ice, and the Air Force commander says, no, you're not thawing him. You're not thawing him. And then, But so somebody has to watch this. It's in a room with the window open, so there's no heat in it. And the second guy on watch comes in, and he doesn't like looking at it through the ice. So he takes a blanket, which happens to be an electric blanket that it was given to the previous guy because he was cold. So he puts it over top. So obviously it melts, and the creature comes back to life. And it doesn't take over anybody. It's not that kind of creature. It's not a shapeshifter type creature. It's actually a vegetable based life form that has seed pods in its hands. Because they chase it, it goes outside, and the dogs rip off one of its arms. And one of the doctors wants he takes some of the seed pods and starts growing these little pods, like beans, a beanstalk with little aliens in them, and you can see them moving and everything. And the creature also, it needs to survive on blood, they find out, but they're saying that it is a vegetative, and the newspaper guy says, oh, like a carrot, so they refer to him as a carrot, basically. So it goes on, and he kills a few more people, and they're trying to track him down. The scientists want to engage with it to try to talk to it because it's very smart, but it's just a working on instinct and wants to plant new children. So it kills two of the scientists and hang them up and drains their blood. And while starts growing some of its own kind in the soil of the greenhouse. So it's a bit convoluted there, but they finally do kill him by electricity, and he shrinks right down to nothing. The doctor, the scientist, still trying to communicate with him, and he gets injured in the process. But then it's sort of, happy ending, everything. But before they're even set up there, like it's made in 1951, so it's a product of the time of the Cold War. The whole thing is because it's North Pole, a crash ship, and they say, the commander says to Captain Henry, the Canadians haven't missed a ship, so it could be the Russians, da dum dum dum, the evil communists, so they're going up, but then they find out it's a spaceship, but it's still permeated the whole thing through there with the Cold War and communist type theme throughout this, because of the dictatorship of the king. The Captain Henry is saying what's gonna happen, even though he's being told something else. And then it ends over with the very last line, which is great because it's used for a lot of things. It's called "Keep Watching the Skies." So inside, like the story, it's keep watching the skies for aliens, but it's also keep watching the sky for Russian spy planes. And it's a bit of it's hugely changed from the story. Okay, but then we moved to 1982, and it was done again by John Carpenter and with Kurt Russell, and they started using some of the names again. Kurt Russell is playing, Mac Creedy rather than Mick Creedy. There is Commander Gary, and there are a few of the other names are similar as well. But the way it starts out is a dog coming from being chased by Norwegians from another place, another station and it is set back in Antarctica. And then they find out that they found this spaceship, and they do go to the place, and it is a saucer again. They keep the saucer aspect, and it is shape-shifting being, but it's much more gory, and it does through a dog, the Huskies, and it it's quite a bit changed again from the story, but it's closer than the 1951 version. So you don't have the communist aspect to it. It's quite gory for the time. The effects are, um, to less to be desired. That's for sure. That the effects aren't the greatest, but it sort of has an ending. Not not even close to the original, because it's the one creature, the Blair, again, that they put him out in a hut, the doctor, and he was building himself a tiny little spaceship to get away in. uh but and then they burn down the whole place because he decides, or they think that he's going to freeze himself again until rescue comes, and then it'll start doing the same thing and get the civilization. So they burn the place down, and McCready and another character are sort of sitting there. The burning of the buildings and everything has heated up the area a little bit, but then it's freezing, and they're just going to freeze to death. And that's where fade out. That's where it ends. So there's quite a few differences, and I like both. I like the original one because it is a product of the 50s, but it's a little better than a lot of the schlock films that were done at the time. Um, Let me look at my time here. I've got a few more minutes. So I like both. I like both for different reasons. And the thing that's interesting about the story, going back to the story, I was talking about in my Aliens, where aliens were, if it's ugly, they are considered, evil, and if they're look good, then they're good. But there is a let me see if I can find it here. Where there is an argument about this in the story between two scientists here. And now I can't find it. Oh, here it is. He's saying, and just because it looks unlike man, you don't have to accuse it of being evil or vicious or something. And that's written in the thing. And it says, you haven't the slightest right to say that. Where he says, I know it's your pet, and he's saying, it's probably as an adolescent, it's evil. It's roasting, slowly roasting alive, local equivalent of kittens. And the other doctor says, you haven't the slightest right to say that, snapped Blair. How do you know the first thing about the meaning of a facial expression inherently inhuman? It may well have no human equivalent whatever. That is just a different development of nature, another example of nature's wonderful adaptability, growing on another, perhaps harsher world. It has different form and features, but it is just as much a legitimate child of nature as you are. You are displacing that childish human weakness of hating the different on its own world. It would probably class you as a fish belly, white monstrosity with an insufficient number of eyes and a fungoid body, pale and bloated with gas. Because it looks like a Medusa hair, snakes, like type of snake things. It's got 3 red eyes, piercing red eyes, and a strange looking mouth. So it's very different, and this is 1938. We have to remember here, and at that time, usually aliens, and this was beginning to where aliens were being treated a little different and starting to get some other character and depth, and that there's never explained why it's doing this. The reaction of the humans is that it wants to take over the world, other than maybe just a survival thing, and it doesn't really mean, because they do say that it could be a peaceful thing because it's not violent, it just peacefully subsumes somebody and duplicates them. So there's a little more depth of the character, but we don't get into what the alien thinks at all. That is yet to come, really, in science fiction. But this was, as I say, 1938, and John W. Campbell went in to speak to F. Orland Tremaine, who was the current editor of Astounding, to talk about the story. But he was offered, and this was in 1937, he was offered the editorship of Astounding at that meeting, because Tremaine was being sort of kicked upstairs to sort of be the the manager of all the magazines that were being published at the time by the company. It didn't work out for him, but it established John W. Campbell. So, and he actually had a longer story, and it's been published. Recently in 2019. Um, Alec no Alec what's his name? Alec Novella Lee. I think that's his name. Yeah, Alec Novella Lee was researching his book. It's a biography, Astounding, John W. Campbell, Isaac Asimov, Robert Heinlein, L. Ron Hubbard, and the Golden Age Science Fiction. And he found the original manuscript, and this has been published as Frozen Hell. And it's got about 45 more pages, and it has that prologue in it. Where in the published version, it's done in a flashback to explain, well, to tell everybody, like, there's 37 in the contingent of the scientists, and there's 37 of them, and they're brought together to make the decision whether to thaw or not thaw, and so that's where the flashback we get. But in this version, there's 3 chapters that lead up, that give more detail of them, finding the anomaly and realizing that it's a spaceship, finding the creature and the nightmares and so forth, and the problems of getting it back and that type of thing. So there's more detail. So this, Tremaine and others said, it was too long, get rid of the beginning, you're not starting in the right place. This was something that was common with Campbell later. He told people, it's like, like Asimov and other writers, that if they were having trouble starting the story, it's, well, because you're starting it in the wrong place. So start it at a different place, and usually further into the story than you originally thought, and that's what happened here. But also, they wanted him to put a female character in, to give a love interest type thing, and he refused to do that. But obviously, they did that in 1951. I suspect he probably wasn't too pleased at the picture. I haven't done a whole lot of research to find out what his thoughts were on the on the film. But I suspect he wouldn't have been too pleased with it. Also, too, it has something that in here is the telepathy, like the mind reading, and that is common, that Campbell sort of tried to get writers to write, and he believed it in himself. He was doing research into telepathy and that type of thing. So he really believed this was possible, and it was the future for that was going to happen. So he wanted it brought into many stories. So yeah, that is Aliens. So all this, all that kind of stuff, the telepathy and everything, was something that was relatively new for Aliens as well, for 1938. So it's a bit odd too that he published it in a book. I think it was August 1938. So he was already editor. So he published his own story, and it's one of his very last stories that he actually wrote, because he gave up writing to do the editorship of the magazine, and to sort of guide science fiction, his vision of science fiction. And it basically lasted until late 40s, early 50s, his vision of science fiction. And he built modern day science fiction, basically. And because either the themes kept on in the way it was kept on, or there was reaction against him that changed things, and that's a lot what happened in the late 40s with the magazine of science fiction and magazine of fantasy and science fiction. I always get that backwards. And then in 1950-51 was Galaxy magazine. So those sort of broke his power over science fiction. And it was happening a little before that. There was a bit of disgruntled way because people wanted to do other things, but he didn't like the idea of it. But anyway, but with Aliens, it fits in perfect for our Alien because it's a horror, and the 1951 film is more sort of, it's a product of its time, Cold War, communist scare type thing. Beware of the Russians and this possibility, and this is, and that's where the thing stands in for communism and Russians. And then in the 1982 version, they use more of the horror aspect of it. It is in here, but there's a lot more, and there's never anything mentioned about the fact that they get anti-gravity from this and atomic power. But in 1982, obviously that was happening. Another interesting thing with the first film, 1951 film, it's the ship crashes on November 1st, and then it finishes up on November 3rd. And I watched it on November 2nd, so it was kind of interesting to see that. But in the story, I'm not sure if I mentioned that this it crashed 20 million years ago. So that was like thrown out the window in all the versions. There's a prequel version that I think has to do with from the 1982 film that has a prequel with the Norwegians of them discovering everything. I haven't watched it yet. It is actually on. I didn't realize it's actually on this here. I thought I wanted the 1982 version, and I thought this had the 1951 version plus the 1982 version. So I bought it because it was cheaper than just the 1982 version. And while I was watching these watching the first one, I found out that it's actually the prequel. So I haven't watched it yet. I haven't had time. I didn't think I was going to be able to do the 1982 version. I'm glad I did in order to get a little comparison. And I think I'll end it there because it is. I'm going quite long now. What are we at? Yeah, we're at 40 minutes. So next week is robots and AI. And the film will be Arthur C. Clarke's Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey. I'll see you then. BookTube, keep watching the skies.